When you spent 36 years of your life going through one traumatic event after another, you soon realize that you have no idea how to relax. So if you want to find out how after 36 years of crazy life experiences I figured out how to relax, then stick around. Hello, my name is Elfreda Vaughan of Metta-morphics. And for the first 36 years of my life, I went through one traumatic event after another, quite the roller coaster. And it wasn't until it all stopped that I realized I had no idea how to relax, and I didn't even know that I wasn't relaxing. And so this video is really an explanation of how I moved through these events and how I got to the place where I suddenly realized I needed to learn how to relax and what I did about it. To put this story in context, if you've watched my first video, you'll know I mentioned how I grew up with childhood adversity. And you'll know that I talked about having a series of difficult events in my life. And one of the things that happens when you have stuff going on in the background is you often try to present this image of having everything figured out, of actually being normal, when in actual fact, behind the scenes, you feel like everything is totally crazy. And this is one of the reasons this video series exists, is because I spend a lot of my time telling people that they are normal under their circumstances, and that there isn't a normal really, that there is only some imagined normality that we think somebody somewhere experiences when in fact they really don't. And so for me, I presented this image all the time of being okay, of functioning, of handling things. You know, sometimes you'd see it wasn't true, but in general, I appeared like I had things figured out, or at least that I had it all under control. And so Meg J talks about what she refers to as people who are supernormal. And these are incredibly resilient people who usually have childhood adversity, who've had adversity maybe in their adult life, and who live this kind of double life where they have this image on the outside of being successful, maybe in their careers, in their education, but actually behind the scenes, things can be quite chaotic. And I was very much like that. When I was a child, I was smiley, friendly, very, very helpful. Nobody really would have guessed that behind closed doors, there was family problems and that there was, huge difficulty going on in my personal life. In my teens, I probably hid a little less, and I did try and confide in people because I was so stressed and I felt incredibly alone at that stage. All of my siblings had left home and there was just me and my mother and father. But when I spoke to people, I often found that they didn't really get it. So I might tell friends certain things and they'd say, oh yeah, my father drinks too. But I knew by their responses that they didn't really understand that it wasn't like my situation, or maybe now in hindsight that they weren't able to talk about things either. As I progressed through my 20s, when both my parents died, I concealed the fact that I had chronic anxiety, that I worried all the time, that I experienced hypervigilance, that I used to have panic attacks at home on my own, and that I had chronic insomnia. I also hid the fact that I wasn't necessarily coping all the time, that I would be very, very overwhelmed with emotions, that I was really struggling. But when people would see me, I'd say, oh yeah, I'm fine and everything is good. And so this is very, very common with people who are trying to project this image of being in control of things. And for me, certainly, creating an image of being in control helped me to feel stronger. It was a necessary thing to establish resilience within myself. And so I concealed all of those things right the way through those periods of my life, until eventually what changed was I started to build a proper support network around me. And so it started with one very good friend who I found I could confide in, who didn't judge me, and it built into a number of other friends who I could confide in also. And having the experience of having somebody who doesn't judge you, who when you fall apart in front of them, or when you tell them something horrendous that's happened to you, that they just listen and they still accept you, and they actually see what's true in you, that yes, you are this person who has these awful experiences, but you are also this resilient person, this person who is determined and who can function in the world. And so having those experiences were incredibly powerful for me. In fact, I remember very clearly what the catalyst was for me to begin to explore my own personal development. And that was when I told one of my friends of my experience of shame. And I told the story that we often do, where you say, you know, when you, as if everybody experiences this. And so I said to her, you know, when you wake up in the middle of the night and you suddenly remember something that you've done, even if it's 20 years ago, and you become overwhelmed with this feeling of shame. In fact, you feel filled with panic and you think you can never go outside again because of what people must think. And you can never face that particular person again who may have been involved in the situation. And you feel like you want the ground to swallow you up. And I said this to my friend and she went, no, I've never experienced that. Embarrassed, yes. Guilty, yes. Never experienced that. And she didn't judge me and go, oh, there's something wrong with you. She said, you need to figure that out and you need help with that, because that's not okay for you to feel like that. And her empathy and her care made me realize that, yes, this was something that I needed to do. But I actually didn't feel ashamed having told her. I felt accepted. Now, the next thing that really changed for me was when I met my husband in 2010. And so if you watched my first video, will know we were childhood sweethearts. And 18 years later, we got back together. But that was the first time in my life where I felt accepted, where I felt loved unconditionally, and where I felt safe at home. I had never felt safe. When I was alone, I didn't feel safe. I had panic attacks. When I was younger, I didn't feel safe because our life circumstances. When I lived on my own with my mother, I didn't feel safe because I didn't feel my mother could handle what was happening in her life. And I felt this overwhelming sense of responsibility to take charge, even though I was only a young woman in my teens initially and then in my early 20s. And so having a feeling of safety gave me the opportunity to explore who I am and how I want to live my life. And so if we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you've ever come across that, you'll know that safety and the foundation of safety is the first thing that's needed before somebody can progress to the point of self-actualization. And so for me, having that foundation of safety, of acceptance, of support, gave me the opportunity to think about where I want to go next. And that's why I ended up doing what I do. So in those years since I met my husband, I graduated top of my class from a degree. I trained in NLP, in coaching psychology and applied positive psychology, which I'm continuing with my studies in. I also trained in mindfulness meditation. And it wasn't until I trained in mindfulness that I realized I didn't know how to relax. It was when I tried to sit still, I realized I actually couldn't sit still. I couldn't close my eyes for very long. I was constantly checking my clock. I was constantly fidgeting and readjusting. And it was then I became conscious of my hypervigilance and my levels of stress, my heart racing, my mind racing. Because I'm a very determined person, I wouldn't give in. And so I continued to push so that I could learn how to sit still and how I could actually down-regulate all of that stuff that's going on in me. And eventually I did. And I did figure out, and so it improved my hypervigilance. It helped me to handle my toxic shame. Now I still get feelings of that, but I know how to sit with it. And so that's really important. I'm going to talk in more detail about mindfulness in another video. So, do stick around to watch that in the coming weeks. But the most important thing of all of this is that all of my experiences has put me in a great position to help people. And that's what I've chosen to do. And so I coach people who feel they are super normal, who are incredibly resilient, but behind the scenes, they have a lot of stuff going on. Or people who feel that they're always trying to show that they're coping when sometimes maybe they don't feel that they are. Or people who feel that they don't know how to relax. And so I help people move to the point of self-actualization, and I help people figure out how to be safe in the present moment so that they have that opportunity to do so. So when they ask the questions of who am I, or how do I want to live my life, or what's going to happen to me, or what's important to me, or how do I be authentic in areas in my life, I can help them, because I know that's been the journey that I've been on. That's the journey I will probably always be on. But my experiences and my training has put me in a position to help people to figure those things out. And if that's something that resonates with you or something you want to ask me questions about, please do subscribe so that you can see more upcoming videos in the coming weeks. My website is in the description below, so please do send me a message or book a free session with me for 30 minutes to have a chat about how my coaching programs could help you. I really hope you'll join me again in my upcoming videos and that our paths will cross again. So until then, take care, and it was great that you joined me today.